what asynchronous JavaScript is, what is we'll go through synchronous first to understand what the differences between the two, but then we'll be talking majorly on asynchronous JavaScript. So the first thing today is we're going to be going through a brief understanding of JavaScript. So what is JavaScript? So JavaScript is one of the most popular and widely known languages in the world right now. It is a scripting language that is used for to create interactive and responsive websites and web apps also. So according to Stack Overflow, it's growing faster than any of the other programming languages. So we can see here, you can see the stats here talking about that JavaScript is actually growing. It's actually growing. It's a growing language and it's growing faster than the others. So we can also say that big companies like Netflix, Walmart, PayPal, they build internal applications around JavaScript. And also the average salary of a JavaScript developer in the US is approximately $72,000 per year, according to Glassdoor.com. So advantages of working with JavaScript includes the fact that you can work as a front-end developer, a back-end developer, and even a full-stack developer who works on both. So those are the advantages of JavaScript and an understanding of JavaScript as we see it. So moving on, what can we do with JavaScript? Understanding what we can do with JavaScript. So for a long time, JavaScript has only been used to build interactive web pages. Some developers even refer to JavaScript as a toy language, but those days are gone due to huge community support and investments by large companies like Google and Facebook. So these days, we can actually build real-time networking applications like chats and video streaming services, as well as full-blown web or mobile apps, or even games. Like you can build games using JavaScript. For example, okay, I'm going to play a video here. So you can see what is playing right now. That is just like a little video of what you can actually do with JavaScript. So moving on, we can see that JavaScript is very wide in terms of functionality and usage. So business of the day, asynchronous JavaScript. First, let's look at synchronous programming. So to understand synchronous programming, let's take a look at these 4 lines of code I have displayed here. So these 4 lines of code I have displayed here, I'm initializing a variable A and assigning the value 1 to that variable. I'm also initializing a variable B and I'm assigning the value 2 to that variable. So after that, I'm going to console log A and then console log B. So when you can see, let's take a look at the output of this. So after initializing the value A and the value B, then to console log A and console log B, the JavaScript is going to run the file from the beginning of the file to the end, and it's going to run it in order, and it's not going to stop until it has finished running it. So the explanation here says that that these 4 lines of code, they can be explained as they are being carried out one after the other. So they are going in a flow, in a particular flow. That is synchronous programming. It has a flow from beginning to the end, and it's not going to stop, because as I say, synchronous code will start at the very top of the file and will execute all the way down to the very bottom of the file, each line in order, and would stop until it gets to the bottom. So basically, synchronous JavaScript is just when a process is carried out, and it's carried out one after the other without doing any other thing simultaneously. So okay, so moving forward, Hello, can you hear me? Okay. All right. So sorry about that. There was a brief network interference there. So okay. So taking a look at this, I made some modifications to this now. We can see that before console logging A and console logging B, we we wrote a function to console log the characters, the word synchronous. So we can see in the output here that synchronous comes before the value of A and the value of B. So that's just basically an explanation on how synchronous JavaScript works. It executes the file from the beginning of the program to the end, from the beginning of the program to the end, and it doesn't stop until it's done. So asynchronous JavaScript. So asynchronous JavaScript is just as similar to synchronous in the sense that it starts out just alike, and it will start at the top of the file and it will execute the code until it gets to the bottom. But during that execution, it will run into various asynchronous functions or code, and it will split off and execute that asynchronous code separately from the rest of the code. And that's usually because it needs to wait to reduce some operations that take a lot of time. And the codes may execute in a different order, but in synchronous, it always executes in order. So asynchronous JavaScript just um, like the opposite. It's just like synchronous, but the difference between the two is that as asynchronous JavaScript executes from top to bottom, it can find a process along the way and and split off from the execution process, and the others will still be executing. Mind you, the other process, the main process will still be executing, but it's go ahead and execute another progress, another process simultaneously, and then finish that and give a result, and still finish the main process also and give the result. So we can see a brief a diagram here explaining it. We can see synchronous. Synchronous works on requests. It works on the first request, gives the response and comes back, then goes to the second request, gives the response and comes back. But asynchronous work on the first request and also work on the second request at the same time. Then give the response to the first one and the second one simultaneously also. So synchronous will work on a particular request and finish it. But asynchronous will work on all the requests at once. So it's just doing a simultaneous work, basically. So let us use a set timeout function, which by nature is an asynchronous function. And this function takes another function that it will execute for a certain amount of time, which we would specify. So let's take a look. I'm going to go to my VS Code now, so I can show you. Okay, so I hope you can see my screen. Okay, so the I'm going to write an asynchronous code here. So let's first go ahead and initialize our variables. So
You should be rounding up now.
Okay. Let me just explain the picture. I was going to run it for you to explain how it works, but then okay. So this picture we have here, you can see that it says it's going to console log. Okay, sorry, you're not seeing my. Okay. So please, can you see my slides now? Okay. So you can see the picture here saying that the set timeout function, then the set timeout function is just it takes another function and to execute that particular function after an amount of time. So in this picture here, we've set the timer to execute after 100 milliseconds. So when it executes, so it's going, this particular function here is going to execute only after 100 seconds. So we can see that even though the set timeout function comes before the console logging, the synchronous and the A and B console log, the word async that we have here is coming in last because the function has been set to execute at a particular time. So until this particular time, this 100 milliseconds is up, it's not going to execute. So it's going to print this remaining 3 out. The compiler is going to go ahead and work on the rest, on the remaining 3 and print them out, while the 100 milliseconds for the set timeout function is working as well. So that's just basically what we have on the asynchronous function. We can also see that there are other asynchronous functions that are built in. So we have the fetch function also. This is also another asynchronous function that this function is supposed to fetch, is supposed to call a particular word fetch from a file. And then you can see that it calls this
You have 2 minutes left.
Okay, it calls this function, it calls this fetch after the synchronous functions, then the async still comes last. So that's just basically what we have on about asynchronous JavaScript. So thank you for listening. So do we
All
have
right, thank you for the presentation.
Yeah.
Is there any question?
Yes, actually.
Okay.
So, Doctor, what are the uses of this asynchronous JavaScript, like applications?
Okay, so applications of JavaScript are like I explained. Applications of asynchronous JavaScript, like I explained, is there are uses in where we want to run simultaneous functions. Like for instance, when you're writing your HTML or your web view or your website, and then you don't want something to be displayed until a particular time. Normally with synchronous code, your code is going to run in order from beginning to the end. But if you don't want something to be displayed until a particular time, or you want to call something from somewhere at a particular time, you make use of the asynchronous code so that you make use of an asynchronous function or asynchronous JavaScript so that it will call the function exactly where you want it to come. Maybe you want a picture to be displayed after 200 seconds on your website. You use that so that it will display picture only after that 200 seconds. So I hope I've been able to answer your question.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, that's fine.
All right. Thank you very much for your presentation. Ewa, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Okay. You can bring it on. Well, I think she's having issue with that internet connection.
She said she has network issues, but she's joining soon.
I can't hear you.
Good morning. Sorry, my screen was having some issues. So, can everybody see my screen?
Yeah, we can see your screen now.
Today I'll be talking on understanding FlexBox with CSS. So, what's CSS? CSS is the language for describing the presentation of web pages, introducing colors, layout, and font. It allows one to adapt the presentation to different types of devices, such as large screens, small screens, printers. CSS is independent of HTML and can be used with any XML-based markup language. So this basically, I think everyone here knows what CSS is. CSS is used to design how your page looks like, and it works with HTML. HTML is for the text, while CSS is for like the color, the font, and all those things that you see on the web page. CSS stands for cascading style sheets. While HTML is used to structure a web document, CSS comes through and specifies your document styles. Like I said, page layout, colors, and fonts are all determined with CSS. Think of HTML as the foundation and CSS as the aesthetic choices. So now we are going to talk about FlexBox. What is FlexBox? FlexBox layout was aimed at providing a more efficient way to lay out, align, and distribute space among items in a container, even when their size is unknown and or dynamic. So basically, before this FlexBox layout mode was started, there were 4 different layout models. We had the block, you had the inline, you had the table, and you have position. So these 4 things were used to lay out the pages before FlexBox came. But the FlexBox is different because it makes it easier to design flexible, responsive layout without using float or position or block for your website. So what are the FlexBox properties? To fully understand how to use the FlexBox model, it's very simple. For you to do the FlexBox model, you have to have the FlexBox container, which is the parent container, and you have to have items. So the properties under FlexBox container, you have flex direction, FlexWrap, justify content, align items, align content, and flex flow. Number 1, flex direction. This property specifies in which direction the flex item should be placed. FlexBox is a single direction layout concept. So from my image here, we can see how the code should look like. This first one, you have the flex direction for the row, you have flex direction for row reverse, flex direction for the column, and flex direction for column reverse. So when you want to write, when you have an item or items that you want to position in your website and you want to use the FlexBox direction, you name the container FlexBox and then you put the flex direction. If you want it to be row, you write flex direction row. If you want it to be column, you write flex direction column. If you want it to be row reverse, and this is how each of the items are going to look like on your website. Then you have the FlexWrap. This property allows you to change the wrap property of the flex items as by default. The multiple flex fits all the items in a single row. That is, you can allow the items to wrap and display the items in multiple lines. So this flex wrap is for when you have like a long list of items and you want to put them, you want to position them in your website. So you use the flex wrap to bring them to the second line. We can see here, when you want to call your flex wrap, you have flex wrap, now wrap, wrap, or wrap reverse. If you use the now wrap, all your items are going to be in a single line, as you can see, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H on a single line. And when you want to wrap it, your A to F is on the line and G to H is on the other line. And then the wrap reverse, G to H comes first, and then you have your A, B, C, D, E, and F. Then another property is justify content. This defines the alignment along your main axis. It helps distribution extra free space. X distribute extra free space left over when either all the flex items on the line are inflexible or are flexible or have reached their maximum size. In simpler terms, it is used to align flex items and specify the spacing distance between and along the flex items. From my image here, when you want to use the justify content, you say you name your container, you have justify content, flex start, flex end, center, space around, space between, and space evenly. And here we can see how each of those look like. When your flex starts, the items start at the beginning of the container. When you use your flex end, they start aligning from the end of the container. When you use your center, flex center, all the items are at the center of the container. Your space around, the space between each of the items are the same. Then the space between, it makes your items start at the beginning and both at the end. And then your space evenly too. You can see how it looks like. Then another property is your align items. This defines the default behavior for how flex items are laid out along the cross axis on the current line. Think of it as the justify content version on the cross axis. It is used to align items vertically inside the flex container for a path. When you want to use your align items, you call your container align item. You have stretch, flex start, flex end, center, baseline, and start. You can see how each of the images look like. When you use your flex start, it starts, and then for align item, it is vertically. So when your flex start, it starts from the top. Your flex end, the images are aligned from the bottom. For the stretch, the images stretch all the way from the top of the container to the bottom of the container. And then for the baseline, it starts at the top. For center, it stays at the center of your container. Then you have the align content. This property is a bit similar to justify content, where justify content aligns the items on the main axis and align content aligns the flex in the container. So this is how align content looks like. You have the align content, flex start, stretch, flex end, space around, center, and space between. This align content is almost similar to justify content. And another property is flex flow. This is the shorthand for flex direction and flex wrap property, which together define the flex container main and cross axis. So if you have a website and you want to use the flex direction and to position your items, and you also want to use the flex wrap property, instead of using both flex direction and flex wrap, you just use flex flow, and then however you want it to look like, either flex flow row wrap or column wrap it will display. So in the beginning, I said that for you to understand Flexbox model, you have the container and the flex items. So the flex items are the items inside flex container. And the properties for this are order, flex row, flex string, align self, and then flex. The first one is order. By default, all the items inside the flex container are displayed in the source order. The default value for each flex item, the order is 0, but we can change the layout order using the order property. So this is just the basic kind of flex when you want to make your images like just the way they are. You can see the code here for one, for the order. The order is 3 here, and we can see that 1 is the third image here. For 2, the order is 2, it is the second image. For number 3, the order is 4. We can see that it is the last image here. And then for number 4, the order is 1. So this is just for order of your items, or if you want to rearrange your items in your website. Then you have flex grow. This property specifies how a flex item should grow concerning the other item in the container. The flex grow property allows particular items to increase weight according to the needs. The value must be a number, and the default value is 0. So here we can see A, B, C, D, and E. These are 5 items. So for A, B, and C, their flex grow is 1. They are normal. But for D, the flex grow is 2 because it be twice the size of the normal item. And then for E, the flex grow is 3. That is why it grows, so it is bigger than all the other items that we have. Another item is flex shrink. This property specifies how a flex item will shrink concerning the other items in the container. Flex shrink is used when FlexWrap is set to null wrap. In such condition, if any item is set to flex shrink 0, then that item will not shrink as compared to the other item in the container. For our example here, we can see that A, B, and C are the same because their flex shrink is 1, but D is different because the flex shrink is set to 0. And then it is also different because the flex shrink is 2. So it is smaller and has shrunk. This is the only item that has shrunk in all these images. Another item is align self. This property aligns a particular item in the flex container. It takes the same values as align item, and it also overrides the value of align item property. That means that if you have in your website and you want to align, you cannot use align item and then use align self, because when you use align self, whatever you have put in your, whatever property in your align item is going to be overwritten by the align self. So when you want to use that, you see flex start, flex end, center. This makes it at the center. You have baseline, which is this, and then you have stretch. And then the last property concerning the item is flex. The flex shorthand allows you to set 3 values in this order: flex grow, flex string, flex basics. So this means that if you have an image and you want to use flex grow, flex string, and flex basics, instead of you doing that, you just use the item flex, and then it displays whatever, it displays your item how you should be. So in conclusion, using the Flexbox model makes designing our websites faster and easier in regards to positioning and alignment. So thank you for listening to my presentation. Do we have any questions?
Thank you for your beautiful presentation. Does anyone ask a question? Wale, you're echoing. If there's no question, maybe our teacher has question for us. So you can direct your question to anybody.
I don't have any questions.
Okay, if there's no question, then at this junction, I will bring the session to an end.